June 28th, 1914. A young man steps out of a small cafe in Sarajevo. His name is Gavrilo Princip. He's 19 years old. Just an hour earlier, he was part of an assassination plot. Now he believes it has failed. The man he was sent to kill, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, is already on his way out of the city. The crowds are beginning to disappear. Police are everywhere. The opportunity is gone. Then, something impossible happens. The Archduke's driver turns onto the wrong street. He realizes the mistake, slows the car, shifts into reverse, but before he can move, the engine stalls. The car stops. Less than 2 meters from Princip, the assassin doesn't hesitate. He steps forward, draws his pistol, fires twice. Within minutes, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire is dead. His wife dies beside him. At first, it looks like another political assassination. Europe had seen plenty of those. No one standing on that street believes they are witnessing the beginning of a world war. But over the next 5 weeks, governments across Europe will make one decision after another, until nearly every major power is at war. The wrong turn didn't create those decisions. It simply forced every nation to reveal the choices it had already been preparing to make. To understand why, you have to go back long before the driver missed that turn. You have to go back to a Europe that had been preparing for war for decades. Part 2. A continent ready to explode. Europe in 1914 looked peaceful. Its capitals were thriving. Factories were producing more than ever. Railways connected entire countries. Trade flowed across borders. From the outside, it seemed like Europe had entered a new age of prosperity. But beneath that prosperity, the continent was becoming more dangerous every year. The great powers were competing for influence. Britain ruled the seas. Germany had become Europe's fastest-growing industrial power. France wanted to recover the territory it had lost to Germany decades earlier. Russia saw itself as the protector of the Slavic peoples in Eastern Europe. Austria-Hungary struggled to hold together an empire made up of dozens of different ethnic groups. And in the middle of all of it was the Balkans, often called the powder keg of Europe. This region was home to competing nationalities, rival empires, and growing independence movements. One of those movements wanted to unite all South Slavic people into a single nation. That dream threatened Austria-Hungary, because millions of South Slavs already lived inside its borders. If they began demanding independence, the empire itself could start to fall apart. Among those Slavs was a young Bosnian Serb named Gavrilo Princip. He believed Bosnia should not be ruled by Austria-Hungary. He believed it should become part of a larger Serbian state. To him, the Archduke wasn't just a royal visitor. He represented foreign rule over his homeland. Princip wasn't alone. A secret nationalist network was already planning violence. Its members believed political change would never come through speeches or elections, only through assassination. Then, they received unexpected news. Archduke Franz Ferdinand would soon visit Sarajevo, not in secret, not surrounded by thousands of soldiers, but openly riding through the city streets in an open-top car. For the conspirators, it looked like the opportunity they'd been waiting for. They began preparing for a single day that they believed could change the future of Bosnia. None of them imagined it would change the future of the entire world. Part 3. The assassins take their positions. The date was set, June 28th, 1914. For the Archduke, it was simply another stop on an official visit to Bosnia. For the conspirators, it was the day they had been preparing for. There were 7 assassins. They spread themselves along the Archduke's planned route through Sarajevo. Each man carried a weapon. Some had pistols. Others carried hand grenades specially designed for assassinations. Their instructions were simple. If one man failed, the next would try. If he failed, another would step forward. The Archduke would have to pass every one of them. Eventually, someone would get a chance. Meanwhile, Franz Ferdinand had little reason to believe he was in immediate danger. There had been warnings. Some officials suggested increasing security. Others recommended changing the route through the city. But the visit went ahead largely as planned. The Archduke insisted on traveling in an open-top touring car. He wanted the public to see him. As the motorcade rolled through Sarajevo, crowds gathered along the sidewalks. Some waved. Some simply watched. Hidden among them, the assassins waited. The first conspirator saw the Archduke's car approaching. His hand tightened around his weapon. Then he hesitated. The moment passed. The cars continued forward. The second assassin also lost his nerve. The motorcade drove past him untouched. The carefully planned operation was already beginning to unravel. Then the third assassin stepped forward. He didn't hesitate. He pulled a bomb from his pocket, lit the fuse, and hurled it towards the Archduke's car. For a split second, it looked as though the mission was over. Part 4. The bomb that failed. The bomb struck the Archduke's car. For an instant, it seemed certain to explode inside the vehicle. Instead, it bounced off the folded roof. The driver accelerated. The bomb rolled beneath the next car in the motorcade. Seconds later, it exploded. The blast ripped through the street, shattered windows, tore into the following vehicle. Several officers and bystanders were wounded. Smoke filled the road. People screamed and ran for cover. But the Archduke was alive. His driver never stopped. The motorcade sped away from the explosion. The assassin swallowed a cyanide capsule, then jumped into the nearby river expecting to die before he could be captured. Nothing went according to plan. The poison had expired. It made him vomit, but didn't kill him. The river was only a few inches deep. Instead of disappearing beneath the water, he landed awkwardly in the mud. Within moments, police officers and an angry crowd pulled him out and arrested him. The assassination attempt had failed. One by one, the remaining conspirators watched the Archduke escape. None of them fired. None of them threw another bomb. The opportunity they had spent months preparing for was gone. Inside the town hall, the Archduke was furious. He had just survived an assassination attempt. Yet the official reception continued almost as if nothing had happened. When he finally spoke, he didn't begin with diplomacy. He looked at the city's officials and said, "I come here as your guest and I am greeted with bombs." The room fell silent. After the ceremony ended, a new decision had to be made. Some officials urged the Archduke to leave Sarajevo immediately. Instead, he insisted on visiting the wounded officers in the hospital. It was a compassionate decision, but reaching the hospital required one more drive through the city. To avoid the busy streets where the bombing had happened, the route was changed. There was only one problem. Part 5, the wrong turn. The man driving the Archduke's car never received the updated instructions. The motorcade pulled away from the town hall. The new plan was simple. Instead of following the original route through the city center, the cars would continue along the river road to the hospital. It was considered the safer option, but there was one critical mistake. The lead driver hadn't been told. Following the original schedule, he turned onto Franz Joseph Street. Almost immediately, someone shouted, "Wrong way!" The driver hit the brakes. He stopped the car, then tried to reverse back onto the correct road. In today's cars, that would take only a moment. But the Archduke's touring car had no modern transmission. Reversing was slow. The engine lost momentum. The car stalled. For a few seconds, it sat completely still. By an extraordinary coincidence, that exact street corner was where Gavrilo Princip had wandered after believing the mission had failed. Disappointed and convinced the opportunity was gone, he had stopped outside a delicatessen near the intersection. Then he looked up. The Archduke's car was right in front of him. Not speeding past, not surrounded by soldiers. Stopped, only a few steps away. Princip didn't have to chase the motorcade. He didn't have to force another opportunity. History had rolled directly toward him. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his FN model 1910 pistol, stepped toward the open car, and aimed at the Archduke. Part 6. 2 gunshots that changed the world. Before anyone nearby could react, Princip pulled the trigger. The first bullet struck Archduke Franz Ferdinand in the neck. The second hit his wife, Sophie, in the abdomen. The attack lasted only a few seconds. Police officers and bystanders rushed toward Princip. They wrestled him to the ground before he could fire again. Some people tried to beat him, others fought to keep him alive long enough to face justice. Inside the car, the Archduke looked at his wife. She was slumped beside him. He reached toward her and reportedly said, "Sophie, don't die. Stay alive for our children." Blood spread across his uniform. At first, many around him believed the wound wasn't fatal. They were wrong. The driver accelerated toward the governor's residence, hoping doctors could save them. They never arrived in time. Within minutes, Sophie was dead. Soon after, Franz Ferdinand died from blood loss. The heir to one of Europe's largest empires had been killed in broad daylight. News spread across the continent within hours. Newspapers rushed out special editions, governments demanded information, diplomats exchanged urgent telegrams. Most people expected Austria-Hungary to punish those responsible. That wasn't unusual. Political assassinations had happened before. No one imagined this one would pull nearly every major power in Europe into the same conflict. Because the real crisis wasn't the shooting itself. It was the question that followed. Who was responsible? And the answer to that question would determine whether this remained a murder investigation or became the beginning of a world war. Part 7. The ultimatum. The assassin was in custody. The Archduke was dead. Now, Austria-Hungary had to decide what came next. The investigation quickly revealed that the weapons used in the assassination had come from Serbia, and that members of a Serbian nationalist network had helped the conspirators cross the border. However, proving that the Serbian government itself had ordered the attack was another matter. The evidence was far less clear. For leaders in Vienna, that distinction mattered less than the opportunity before them. For years, Austria-Hungary had viewed Serbia as a growing threat. Serbia's influence in the Balkans was expanding. Nationalist movements inside the empire were becoming bolder. Many Austrian officials believed that if Serbia wasn't stopped now, their empire would only become weaker. But there was a problem. Russia had long supported Serbia. If Austria attacked, Russia might intervene. Austria-Hungary didn't want to fight Russia alone, so it turned to its most powerful ally, Germany. In early July, Austrian officials met with German leaders. They asked a simple question: if we move against Serbia, will you stand with us? Germany's answer was decisive: yes. Historians often call it the blank check. Germany promised to support Austria-Hungary, even if that decision led to a wider war. With Germany behind them, Austria-Hungary became far more confident. Nearly a month after the assassination, it sent Serbia an ultimatum. The document contained 10 demands. Some required Serbia to suppress anti-Austrian groups. Others demanded arrests and investigations. Then came one condition that changed everything. Austria insisted that its own officials be allowed to operate inside Serbia to investigate the assassination themselves. Accepting that demand would have meant allowing a foreign power to exercise authority on Serbian soil. For any independent nation, that was an extraordinary concession. Serbia now faced an impossible choice: accept every demand and surrender part of its sovereignty, or refuse and risk war. Part 8. The dominoes begin to fall. Serbia had just 48 hours to respond. Its government knew it couldn't defeat Austria-Hungary alone, so before sending its reply, it quietly asked Russia for support. Then, the deadline arrived. To the surprise of many European leaders, Serbia accepted almost every Austrian demand. It agreed to suppress anti-Austrian organizations. It promised to arrest those connected to the assassination. It offered to cooperate with the investigation. But on one point, it refused. It would not allow Austrian officials to conduct investigations inside Serbia. Its leaders argued that doing so would violate Serbia's constitution and undermine its independence. From Serbia's perspective, it had compromised as much as any sovereign nation reasonably could. From Austria-Hungary's perspective, one refusal was enough. The ultimatum had failed. On July 28, 1914, exactly 1 month after the assassination, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Artillery shells soon began falling on the Serbian capital, Belgrade. At that moment, the conflict was still regional. One empire, one small kingdom. Europe had seen wars like this before. But behind the scenes, the alliance system that had been built over decades was beginning to activate. Russia started mobilizing its army to defend Serbia. Germany viewed Russian mobilization as a direct threat. Its military strategy depended on striking quickly before Russia could fully prepare. Every government believed it was reacting to someone else's decision. Every mobilization prompted another. Every declaration created a new crisis. The assassination had started the chain. Now, the dominoes were falling faster than anyone could stop them. Part 9. Europe goes to war. Russia's mobilization changed everything. In 1914, mobilizing an army wasn't just a precaution. It meant calling up millions of reservists, loading weapons onto trains, moving entire armies toward the border. Once that process began, it was almost impossible to stop. Germany watched the Russian mobilization with growing alarm. Its generals believed that waiting would be disastrous. Germany feared a two-front war. Russia was to the east. France, Russia's ally, was to the west. If both attacked at the same time, Germany could be crushed between them. For years, German military planners had prepared for exactly this situation. Their solution was the Schlieffen Plan. The idea was simple: defeat France quickly, before Russia finished mobilizing, then move the German army east to face Russia. It sounded logical on paper, but there was one major obstacle. France's border defenses were heavily fortified. Attacking them head-on would be slow and costly. German commanders chose another route. They would march through Belgium, a small country that had declared itself neutral. Germany demanded permission to cross Belgian territory. Belgium refused. On August 4, 1914, German troops crossed the border anyway. That single decision transformed a continental war into something even larger. Britain had guaranteed Belgium's neutrality under an international treaty. As long as Belgium remained untouched, Britain might have stayed out of the conflict. Now, its government had a legal and political reason to act. Later that same day, Britain declared war on Germany. In just over a month, a failed assassination in Sarajevo had become a war involving Europe's greatest powers: Austria-Hungary, Serbia, Russia, Germany, France, Britain. Each government believed it was making the necessary decision, but together, those decisions had created a conflict no one could control. Part 10. The World After the Wrong Turn. The war that many believed would be over by Christmas lasted more than 4 years. The fast-moving campaigns that generals had planned became endless trench systems stretching hundreds of miles across Europe. Machine guns made charging across open ground almost impossible. Heavy artillery reshaped entire landscapes. Poison gas introduced a new kind of horror to the battlefield. For the first time, tanks rolled into combat. Aircraft evolved from simple reconnaissance machines to weapons of war. By the time the fighting ended in 1918, more than 20 million people were dead. Entire towns had disappeared. Millions more returned home carrying wounds that would never fully heal. The war also destroyed 4 great empires: the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire, the Russian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. New countries appeared. Old borders vanished. The political map of Europe was redrawn. The peace that followed proved just as fragile. The harsh terms imposed on Germany created anger and instability that would help pave the way for an even more devastating conflict 2 decades later: World War II. So, did one wrong turn start World War I? Not by itself. Europe had already spent decades building rival alliances, expanding armies, competing for power, and allowing nationalism to grow. The continent was already filled with tension. The assassination didn't create those problems. It exposed them. When the Archduke's driver accidentally turned onto the wrong street, he didn't begin Europe's divisions, but he placed one car in one unexpected location at one irreversible moment. Gavrilo Princip fired 2 shots. The bullets killed 2 people. The decisions that followed changed the world. And that's why history remembers a wrong turn in Sarajevo as one of the most consequential mistakes ever made.